Welcome back to a new episode of Out of the Bubble podcast. My name is Rachel Peru, and I'm really looking forward to talking to yet another lady that I found on social media. Social media gets a really bad rap, I think, but for our age group, it's a great way to connect with women that are all different backgrounds, all different stories to tell that can really inspire and help motivate us. So today's guest is Sophie Cleere. Sophie is a yoga teacher. She's a conscious sexuality educator, and she is also a wellness and a women's coach. So we've got so much to talk about, and not least one of my favorite subjects, body confidence, particularly as women in their peri-menopause and the menopause go through so many body changes. It can really affect how we feel connected to our bodies. So Sophie and I have got a lot to talk about. So grab a coffee and enjoy. So good morning, Sophie. It's lovely to meet you on here. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited.
We were chatting before we've gone live, and it just feels like I already know you because we're both so present on social media. It's always nice when you actually make that real connection, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really lovely to see you actually talking in the flesh.
Yes. Yeah. So I've already done your lovely introduction. So let's get straight off with what 3 words would you use to describe yourself and why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the mood I'm in.
Yeah.
I was reading what I was writing about myself, and I thought, yeah, I am that, and I'm also other things too, depending on how I'm feeling. But I'd say I'm definitely sassy. Like, I think I just, whatever that means, but I have a kind of sassiness about me, which I love. I think I'm sexy. I want to continue to embrace my sexuality and sensuality as I get older. And so I feel really quite sexy now at this stage of my life. And I also thought boundary pushing, because I like to stretch myself. I like to experience things that challenge me and that I can grow and expand from. And so, yeah, I think I push my boundaries, and hopefully I help other people to, just slightly stretch theirs as well in a good way.
Absolutely. I love all 3 of those and completely kind of feel like we're aligned together. We've got so much to talk about. And yes, to feeling sexy. And I think that's something that we're going to have a great conversation about today, which is going to be really interesting. Yeah. Before we get into the kind of nitty gritty, what's your background? I know you're a yoga teacher, but have you always been this body confident? Have you always felt this kind of connected to your body? What's your journey been like?
Yeah, well, I danced from a very, very young age. So I think I did always have that connection with my body. I always moved, and, so it was always there in that sense, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I was always very body confident. And I wouldn't say that I'm always body confident now either. It's like I say with the words, it really depends on how I'm feeling on the day. And of course, as we age, things change, and good days and bad days, and feeling fabulous, and then like, oh no, really not. So yes, but I think definitely I hit a point in my sort of late 30s where everything started to sort of slot into place. And I think I just started to accept my body more, and I started doing things like having nude photo shoots. That was a huge turning point for me. Yeah. I know you're very familiar with being in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really just a huge shift, and really helped me to just sort of appreciate my body. And yeah, so in answer to your question, no, I haven't always been this body confident. When I think about how I used to feel about my body when I was very young, late teens, 20s, I definitely was not happy with it. And then when I look back at pictures of myself, obviously when I was that young, it's like, wow, really, there was nothing to worry about ever. But
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that to recognize that body confidence is never a done deal, is it? Something I've just been talking about my Facebook group this morning, that I have wobbles all the time, and going through the menopause now, my body's changing, and with that brings new emotions, new challenges, and it's never going to be a done deal. It's always going to be a work in progress.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's really important to be honest about. And you know, especially when people are seeing our work and seeing a very confident side of ourselves, it's important to actually be honest and say it's not always that way. We don't always feel that way.
So you've been teaching yoga for what, 12, 13 years now?
Yeah, quite a while. Yes, yeah.
And I'm guessing that's been a huge part of your connection with your body as well, because you really do have that mindfulness, don't you, when you're doing yoga?
Yeah, I would say yes, and I would say no as well. I had a very, I don't have a very strong yoga practice anymore, but I had a very strong Ashtanga yoga practice. And I would actually say that at points it actually separated me from my body, because the practice was very challenging. And for me, I went down a road of accomplishment. And the Ashtanga practice, you actually go to different stages, there's levels essentially.
Right.
So, you know, it definitely, it did really help on lots of levels, but there was big pieces that were missing from my understanding of who I was as a woman, not just as a yoga practitioner. And I still feel incredibly grateful for all of the years of yoga practice that I did, and wouldn't trade it for anything at all. But again, I think, like anything, there is you know, the light and dark side to it.
So what was the decision, what was the kind of catalyst that made you realize that actually your strength is really wanting to help empower women and to help them with their own body confidence journey and really connect with their sensuality and their sexuality? What was the kind of catalyst for that thought?
Yeah, interestingly, I discovered this in therapy, what my real reason for it was. And what I discovered in therapy was that because I was brought up by a woman who was not empowered, very disempowered, not body confident, was always, and she was a beautiful woman, you know, but was always on a diet, always saying she was on a diet and saying she was too fat, and just in many areas of her life just was not an empowered woman. That is why I want to do the work that I do, because I can see the road that it can take you down. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm just not prepared to, and I don't want anyone else to either. So you know, I know that there's another way, and I've certainly gone in a very different direction to my mum, thankfully. So, you know, I very much try not to compare myself to her, even though that is a difficult thing to do, I think, as women, to not compare ourselves to our mothers. But yeah, I feel like I have gone down an incredibly different path, couldn't be more different, really. And I know how good it can feel to be connected to who you are as a woman, and including everything's included. So that's the ups and the downs. That's when, you know, when I'm saying things like, yeah, it's this, but it's also this, it's like, it isn't just all like, oh yeah, I'm just so sexy and sassy, and it's like, no, I'm sometimes very low, and I you know, have difficult days, and that's all part of life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's actually quite freeing when you can get to that point, isn't it, of accepting the good with the bad and just accepting yourself for who you are, where at the stage where you are right now, because it's always changing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I look at my relationship to my body and my sexuality, especially in my 20s and 30s, and it's completely transformed. So, you know, I know it's possible because I know where I was, and it was not a good place. So, yeah.
And how easy is it now to talk to the clients that you have? Because for some reason, it is still talking about sexuality and women, older women being sensual, is still a stigma in society. I see it on Instagram all the time when women are posting pictures of themselves in bikinis and swimwear and lingerie after a certain age. They get so much criticism and judgment, and it usually comes from women. And I think it's from a place of fear. So how difficult is it to open up that conversation about sexuality?
I think by the time I talk to somebody, they're already curious.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women are really curious, but for one reason or another, they're not ready, or they just have had no connection to that part of their being for so many different reasons. You know, like I've never been married, I've never had children, and I was very disconnected from that part of myself. And I know that there's lots of other reasons why a woman might be, perhaps they've been in a very long marriage and there hasn't been much sexual connection. You know, all sorts of reasons. So I think by the time people are kind of messaging me and they're at least curious about what it might look like to actually have a like delicious, satisfying sex life. And it's not just, you know, that's not only the work that I do, it's also, you know, midlife transition and changing that story that I think is very deeply entrenched in our beings, of like everything just goes, it's all downhill from, you know, 40 onwards. And when I started going through peri-menopause, or you know, I was it happened very quickly and quite early, and I could just feel myself just like, I don't want to, I'm not ready, I don't want to, I'm not that woman, I can't, that woman, I can't go there, I can't be that person. And then I just realized that I would be able to do it, I can do it my way, and I don't need to, you know, shuffle off into a corner and just be very meek and start knitting or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know, I can do it my way, and I wasn't going to buy into that narrative that it means that, you know, I'm less than because of it.
Just bear with me, Sophie. Just going to turn my car alarm off. Won't be a second. Oh, I see, it stopped. Typical.
Is your car okay?
Yes, fine. Yeah. Be a cat or something.
Sensitive car alarm.
It is. Yeah, I can come, and I'm going through the menopause now, and I'm like you. I didn't really connect with myself and my sensuality and my sexuality till later in life, until my 40s. And so I really felt the best I'd ever been, and really enjoyed my sex life, and really felt really connected with myself. And then fast forward 10 years to now, I'm 52. This last year, the menopause knocked me sideways, because it was like, what the hell's going on here? And obviously I had all the physical symptoms, and that was really off-putting and really threw me. But then it was almost like having to relearn those steps again, and really have to think about what I wanted and what made me feel good. And it's hard to talk about. It's something that I don't talk about with my friends very often, about how I'm feeling about my sensuality, my sexuality, my experiences. I do think it's still that difficult barrier to get past, isn't it? Do you find that people are quite open with you, even though they've gone through this journey? Do you find it's quite easy to get them to open up?
That by the time someone's ready to sit down and have a conversation with me, they're normally ready to talk about it, you know. But it's obviously getting someone to that point can take a long time, you know. So
and how do we get past this kind of stigma? How do we get, I mean, obviously talking about it, particularly on social media, is brilliant. There's so many more women like yourselves, and the work that we're doing to really kind of open up the conversation. But what else can we do to beat that drum, to help encourage women to own their bodies again, and to really kind of take their space and know that it's okay to talk about it, to want to feel good in their bodies, to show their sensuality?
I think the thing is that there's a lot of shame that's layered on women being sexual beings. It means that they're, can I swear? Or
you
not?
can, yeah.
So it means that they're sluts or whores or whatever, right? So and so there's all this shame that's kind of layered on it. And the way that I see it is, or my sexuality it's actually a spiritual practice. This is the difference, and maybe that's a bit woo for some people to hear, but it's like a meditation. You know, self-pleasuring is it's a meditative practice. It's like yoga. It's, you know, it's actually just another way for us to really connect to who we are. Yeah. And women's bodies are literally made for pleasure. You know, we have parts of our bodies that are only for pleasure. You know, that's their sole purpose. Yeah. And so you know, I think I honestly don't know exactly how we do it, but it's almost a reframing of what it is. And I think when you see it more as a spiritual practice, a way of just connecting to ourselves, that's not shameful and it's not dirty, and it doesn't mean that we're a loose woman or whatever. Yeah. Whatever, because actually you can experience a lot of pleasure just on your own. Yeah. You know, and imagine, and I know this is not possible because this is not how we grew up, but imagine if we'd had mentors like, you know, I'd like to think I'm a mentor. I'm sure that you're a mentor. Actually saying, do you know, you've got this amazing body that's made for pleasure, and you don't even need another person to create all of this beautiful energy in your body, and it's precious, and you don't need to give it to anyone, and no one needs to give you that either. Your sexual energy is yours, and you might come together with someone and you might create something very beautiful together, but actually your sexual energy is yours and it's not for someone else to give to you.
Yeah, that narrative is such an empowering, positive message that if like you say, if that was brought in at an earlier age, if that's what we'd heard as young women, you know, what a difference it would have been.
Yeah, completely. And I would love to think that I think we have to re-educate ourselves now. Yeah. So now's the time for a lot of women, and then I'm hoping that they teach their daughters, and it goes like that. But I mean, it's a beautiful thing. You know, it's how we're here on this earth. You know, we're and obviously it's, you know, it's just been like, it's a terrible, shameful thing, and I think it's lifting the veil from that, because the problem is that when it's kept in the shadows, it leaks out, you know, in not good ways, which we see in society all of the time.
You talk a lot about conscious sexuality. So is that spirituality part of that? Can you explain what that looks like, what that is?
Yeah, so really it's bringing our awareness to what we're doing in the realm of sexuality. And so we talk about things like boundaries and consent. This is a really important piece that, again, if only we'd been taught about boundaries and consent as young people. But it's like being aware when someone is perhaps going to touch your body, and it can just be a touch, you know, just a touch or a stroke. Like, how does that feel? Is that a yes? Is that a no for your body? Is that a yes, please? Is that a stop? Like, what, you know, what does certain touch from different, you know, obviously different people evoke a different response in us as well. So what does that evoke in our body? How does it feel? And learning that language, that language for ourselves of our body. So it's just bringing our awareness to it, our conscious awareness to it as a practice. And it, you know, and it's not easy. You know, it's not an easy path, and we could definitely, you know, I hear a lot of women just say, do you know what? You know, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s. I've kind of had enough. It's okay. I've had a lot of sex. It's fine. I'm just not gonna, you know, and maybe that's the truth for them, and that's fine. And personally, you know, I just feel like there's so much to be experienced.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like that at all.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be like that. It
No.
doesn't. But you have to be ready to kind of go, okay, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. For somebody that's listening to this, that wants to try and take some tentative steps to kind of improving how they feel about everything, what suggestions would you make? I mean, I know you took that step of doing the naked photo shoot, and I've done that as well. And I found that really empowering. And that was at the beginning of my modeling career. So I was about 46, 47. And I was scared to do it because it took me out of my comfort zone, but I really found the whole experience quite beautiful and moving. What else can people do to try to kind of take those tentative steps to discover?
Yeah. I think getting building a relationship with our body, and so things like, you know, the photography, that's an amazing thing to do. That might feel like really scary for some women and really exciting for others. I spend a lot of time in saunas, you know, being naked in saunas. I go to the nudist beach, you know, things like that, things where I can feel it's building a relationship of trust and safety within your own body, learning that you are safe in your own body, because I think for a lot of women, we don't feel safe in our own body. And so that's such a big part of it, is learning to trust ourselves, to make good decisions for ourselves. So doing gentle touch, conscious touch, I run self-love classes, and we do gentle touch, self-touch, and we do sensual movement, and it's all like really gentle, but a really nice step into, oh, how do I feel when I like move my hips, and how do I feel when I stroke my face, and oh, that feels, you know, it can be really, really gentle. It doesn't it can, and that can still be very profound and really can shift how you feel about your body.
You do think, you mentioned the saunas, and so you do group sessions in saunas, based around saunas, don't you? How does that work? Because that sounds really interesting.
Well, so we haven't done it for a while, simply because the sauna's moved, but yeah, we would bring women together in a sauna, quite a big sauna. We had, before COVID, we had like 20 odd people in a sauna, and we'll do rituals and pampering, and, you know, and that it was a space, and is a space, that people can, if they want to be naked, they can be naked. Because I remember when I went to the first time I went to Helsinki, and I went to some saunas in Helsinki, and just experiencing the sauna culture there, and there's all these women naked with all their different bodies, and I was so struck by it, that it's not what we do here. And so we don't see generations of different bodies in one space. And God, wouldn't that be amazing if we could just see all those different bodies, rather than everything that we see on social media, or like when we were growing up, like magazines, and you know, it was a different time. But so being in spaces that, you know, feel safe, and people are like, okay, well, maybe actually I'm okay, I can just like take off my bikini top and that feels okay, or just being around women. So we would just create these amazing like womb-like spaces, and do different rituals, and sometimes women would just be screaming, and we'd like run into the sea, and, you know, because the sauna was near the sea. So
fabulous. I love that. I love that idea of women supporting each other going through that process as well. There's such strength in that, isn't there? That's really beautiful. And it's interesting you were talking about there. I was going to ask you about whether you thought there was this kind of different attitude abroad to in the UK. I worked in Denmark as a au pair in my 20s, and they were the same, so free about their bodies, and really kind of, I just got used to seeing different body shapes and sizes, and of all ages. And here we're so much more restrained, aren't we? I wonder why.
yeah, I just think it's not appropriate, is it? And it hasn't been. It never has been.
No, and I suppose that's what gets the reaction. So when you do see women on like social media in the lingerie, they're in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it seems to get an adverse reaction because we're just not used to seeing it.
Yeah.
Which is why we need to do it even more.
Absolutely. I agree. And it makes me really sad that there is that, because there is that belief that you get to a certain age and then you should just stop. Stop with all that, and your post reproductive years are over, and so that means that you're no longer valid as as a essential woman. And I just think that's absolute bullshit. I don't believe that for a moment. And my experience from my journey is that I'm just growing into myself more and more, and I intend to continue to do that. I know women in their 70s who are super juicy, who are going around, and one woman in particular, Laurie Handlers, who's a mentor of mine, she's 70, I think she might be 73 now, and she's going around teaching these big conscious sexuality events all around the world. She's amazing, and she's not
need more of those.
Right, and it's like, it's so important to have that as a, okay, that's a mentor.
And actually, there's a few people of our age group, 40s, 50s, that are talking about it, which is brilliant for the generation below us, because they can get our wisdom and realize that actually life doesn't, you don't just dry up at 40 and that's it. But we need more role models for us older up, 60, 70-year-olds talking about it.
We do, and I'm always looking for them.
So that
there are some out there, but you have to really look. You have to really look, because a lot of them are not on social media anyway. But
So what are the tips? What were the most valuable things for you in terms of your body confidence? What were the kind of things that really made a massive difference to how your mindset worked?
I think the things that really were big shifts for me were I started working when I was still having regular menstrual cycles, which I'm not really now. But luckily I found menstrual cycle awareness when I was in my late 30s. So that was really an amazing gift, and I'm so pleased I got it there at that stage. But that just sort of brought me into the understanding that actually my body is so wise, it's there, and I don't really need someone outside of myself telling me what I need to be doing with my body. So that was a beautiful gift. That doesn't really sort of fit with me now, because I'm just simply not in that phase of my life anymore. But I think it's a beautiful thing. And then one of my most transformative experiences was I had a tantric massage about 4 years ago, and it was just the most beautiful experience, and that was a real turning point for me. And I think if any woman is feeling blocked and is prepared to do something like that, I would say always go to a woman first, just for that safety kind of aspect to it. But that was like, wow, that's when I really start to appreciate my body was really just this vessel of pleasure, that I could just create all this amazing energy in my body. So that was a huge turning point for me too.
And it is a journey, and it is kind of ever changing. So when you're coaching, how long do you work with your clients for? Over what length of time?
It really depends. I do anything from single coaching sessions, which are like breakthrough sessions where people, I was talking to a lady yesterday and she said, you changed my life in 60 minutes.
Wow.
So I haven't done one of those sessions yet where someone hasn't just had like a big light bulb moment. because, you know, with coaching, you're just helping people find what is already there, just help to shine a light on what they know, but they maybe just can't see.
Do you think sometimes women almost need that permission from somebody else?
Definitely.
To let go of all those hang-ups and just be who
Yeah, 100%. Because I think also, like you were saying, it's not something, well, in my world, I talk about it all the time, but generally it's not something, like the lady I was talking to, she said and she's 60, she said, I had my first conversation about sex with my friends 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's just not something that's spoken about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think permission is, it's one of those things. It's like you bring it up and then people are like, oh my God, yes. Yeah. They just want to, you know, people want to talk about it and want to explore it. But yeah, it's definitely, permission is a huge thing. And again, I think that's why, you know, women like us who are not doing the normal thing are so important, because it does give other women permission to live differently, you know.
Have you seen a change? Have you seen a shift in, because I'm guessing media and advertising and the way older women are portrayed has a big impact too on how we feel about our bodies. Have you seen a shift, do you think, into a more positive representation in the last few years?
Well, there's women like you out there, which I don't think that was happening. And I mean, I've only noticed it in the last few, I'd say even like 2 years. I don't know. That's just my observation. But that does definitely seem to be changing. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because
I think there's still a lot of tokenism. I think
that's what I wanted to, that's what I was, you know, it's like, oh, we have to put the older lady in because, you know, that.
But I think you've got to start somewhere. And I'm hoping that whenever they do that, whoever they choose, they always get a really positive response, and they get such a great feedback from consumers that eventually that has to turn into becoming a normal conversation, and we're not even having to have these conversations, that it just happens because they see the response from other women, because we all want people that we can relate to.
Completely. I mean, I buy underwear from different brands, and I haven't, you know, it's generally always women in their 20s that are models, right? And it would just make a huge difference to me to just see some midlife women and up, you know, it just, it really would make me want to buy their stuff more. And
and I didn't start buying nice lingerie until I was 40. I got divorced, and every month I bought myself a new set, and then I got more adventurous and I wore sexier lingerie, and it made me feel amazing. But the shops that you had to buy them from never had anybody that looked like me. And then there is that whole thing of, oh God, you know, am I the odd one out here? But I'm not. There's loads of women in our age group that want to wear sexy lingerie. We just don't see ourselves in the advertising, which is frustrating. But then that adds that layer of fear for some women, doesn't it? To go into a shop or to go and buy it.
Yeah, because I can notice how I feel if I go into a shop that's like a younger person shop, even if there's something that I want in there. So thinking of America, like I go to American Apparel sometimes, and that is a really young person's store in my mind, and I do feel like, oh, are they looking at me thinking I shouldn't even be in here, you know, which is crazy, but that's how we, you know, that's how I feel certainly in that situation. So yeah, going into an Ann Summers, or, you know, when their models are in their 20s, and again, that's just like, again, pushing that narrative of like, you can only be sexy when you're young and fertile.
No, it's, you know, it's a minefield, really. It's the whole, got another conversation, isn't it? It's just there's still a long way to go. If you could change anything now, what would be the first thing that you changed about women's kind of mindset and what's going on right now?
Oh God, what would I change? So many things. I think I just like getting women in a space together, you know. So I think it's that permission, giving women permission to feel it's okay to feel pleasure. And I'm not even talking about sexual pleasure. I'm just like feeling good, you know. It's okay to feel good. Our bodies are, you know, we're here in these amazing bodies that can experience such a wide range of sensations and feelings and experience, you know. And it's okay to feel good, and let yourself explore that, you know.
So is this the kind of thing that you do on the retreat? Because I know you're doing retreats, aren't you? So what kind of happens there? Is that the same sort of thing, getting
exactly that? Yeah, it's the same as the saunas and the retreats. Yeah, it's kind of like bringing people in, and then we go through different layers of just dropping and letting go of whatever's going on outside. And when women come together, it's just amazing what happens when we come together. We leave our stories out the door, like our responsibility, not our stories, but our responsibilities and everything that kind of holds us in, letting that go. And, you know, there's always tears, there's always, you know, a real sense women just come together. It's really beautiful. And then from there, we can start to shed layers of shame and guilt, and, you know, maybe even tap into some like anger and like that fucking guy or whatever it is, and just like move through that. It's okay to express what you're feeling, whether that's anger or shame or, you know, pleasure or joy. You know, we have all of this available to us. So yeah, it's really bringing women together in order to just go through that beautiful process. And they leave and they feel amazing. And like I see women just make real shifts, doing things that they never thought they would do, you know. And
what a release. I can imagine that's a huge release, and we don't appreciate that it can actually be such a blockage and stop us from going on to do so many other amazing things when we're carrying all that kind of tension and disconnects.
So it's just, you know, very gentle opportunities to slightly push yourself out of your boundary, you know, just stretch your boundaries a little bit in a way, in a very safe space, you know. Nothing is pushed on anyone. Everyone has, you know, they're all sovereign beings. They get to choose what they do and don't do, and that's really, really important. And maybe there's some, you know, opportunities for stretching ourselves and doing something that's a little bit outside of our comfort zone. And how does that feel? And generally people just feel very much alive from that.
Oh, so when's your next one? Are you doing one this year?
I am. I've just booked one in for September. So the end of September, it's the 16th to the 19th in Dorset, in this really beautiful barn that I've been going to for years and years, but it's the last time I'm going to be able to go there. And it's just a very perfect space for what we do, because it's our own space and there's no one coming in and out, and we just get to sort of own it's our home for the weekend. We're very close to the sea. There's a pool, there's a hot tub, we're in nature, amazing food. Like it's really, it's a really beautiful experience. So yes, if there's anyone listening to this who would love to just, you know, discover who they are as a wild, sensual woman, or, you know, or whatever flavor of femininity that we have lots of different flavors, don't we? But then
that's the thing as well, isn't it? That's the thing, that sensuality, sexuality, being able to express it looks very different to every different woman has a different way of feeling that, expressing it. And I think it's about acknowledging that as well, isn't it? That one box doesn't fit all.
Right, exactly. And women we're all so different too. So there's so many ways of being a woman. There's so many ways to express our femininity, and you know, no one of us is the same. And so it's sort of discovering what that is for you. Like, you know, who am I as a woman? Like, you know, what lights me up? What makes me feel really alive? And you know, what makes me feel safe and what doesn't feel okay for me, and just getting very, very curious about you, about, you know. Yeah.
It seems to me that word curious, it's like, because I feel more like my sort of kind of 16-year-old self in my mind than I ever have, you know, than I have done for years. I feel like I've gone back to that girl with the confidence. And it seems to me that when we were younger, we had all this sense of curiosity about our bodies, about life, and then you lose that along the way. And then you get to your 40s and 50s, and it seems to you can reignite it again.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something about the transition of menopause, peri-menopause and menopause that you're kind of faced with yourself.
Yeah.
And it is a threshold. It's a stepping over into another phase of life. It literally is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's a letting go of the woman that we were, and embracing the woman that we're becoming. And I think so. I'm sure you know Kate Codrington, but she calls it second spring, right?
Yeah.
So and that's how it feels for me. It's just like it's not a winding down, it's actually a leveling up. It's like next level.
100%.
And so that kind of curiosity and sense of like, what is the next half of my life going to bring? Who am I going to be? What am I going to create?
It's
exciting.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching your journey and what else you can become and bring and evolve. It'll be really interesting, and I love the work you're doing, and I love the way that you are showing up for women, because you are inspiring, and you will. Sometimes it's easy to forget the work that you're doing and the impact you have on other people, because there'll be women out there that just needed to see some of your posts that just remind themselves that they've got to check in with their own bodies and just give them that extra boost. So well done, you, keep it up. How can people find you, Sophie?
I mean, Instagram is probably the best first step. So Instagram, and I have a website which you can get through Instagram. So,
brilliant. And is the retreat details on the website as well?
The retreat details are on there, and then my coaching, if anyone's interested in coaching, you can also find details of so I do single sessions, but I also do like a 3-month container as well. So if anyone's interested in going on that journey. Thank you so
much. My last question that I ask all my guests: if you were to pay yourself a compliment, what would it be?
Yeah, I wrote this down, so hopefully it's gonna come out okay. But one thing that I'm really proud of is that I have transformed one of the biggest issues and my biggest blocks in my life into the thing that is not only very empowering for myself, but is also the thing that I'm helping other women to discover and to be liberated with. So so I give myself kudos for that.
Powerful stuff. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and looking forward to staying connected. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sophie. I think it's a really important message, and we have to remember to connect with our bodies, and it's maybe something you're struggling with right now. So be kind to yourself, take those small steps, like Sophie mentioned, being more conscious with your body, how it feels in different situations, but also just being open to have conversations with your girlfriends about, how you're feeling about your sexuality, how you're struggling with things, because we're all going through these situations. And if we all open up and talk to one another, then we will all support one another and learn that we're not alone in this, and there's no shame in how we're feeling about our bodies. And I think it's really important to lift this taboo around the subject, and the conversations like this with Sophie is a huge step forward. So I really loved listening to Sophie, and it's also remembering that these are our bodies. They're absolutely amazing, and we've got to take back some control over our own bodies. So learning to connect with that, being conscious about it, whatever that looks like to you, and not being afraid to express our sensuality, which is something that is, there is a shift. We are seeing lots more women in their 40s, 50s and 60s showing up and representing. And I think having role models like that in front of us will help lead the way. So lovely conversation. I hope it's given you some food for thought. The podcast is now going to be going to fortnightly, just to free up a little bit more time for myself to work on other projects. So I will be still here bringing you fortnightly amazing women for the podcast, but I won't be here every week. So just to remind you that I will be fortnightly from now on. Next week, I'm heading off to New York. I'm really excited. It's something that my close friend Jo were always planning to do for our 50th, which obviously happened in lockdown 2 years ago. So Mark and I and my friend and the partner are going to New York, which is going to be amazing next week. Really looking forward to it. And I'm also, fingers crossed, going to try and do a bit of work hustling as well. So watch this space, but just keep following your dreams, because age is definitely just a number, and it shouldn't hold you back from trying to follow your dreams and to push forward and to really to see what you can become in this next chapter, because there's so much more for me, and I know that I've got a lot more in me to give. So looking forward to seeing what that brings. So next week in New York, here I come. Back in a fortnight, but in the meantime, keep being fabulous.